Good evening, guitar addicts. My name is Welcome to Guitar Gods and Masterpieces. The amazing Joe Satriani was recently here in Australia. Let's go now and check out a chat I had with Joe on the G3 tour. Joe Satriani brought the world many musical gifts. One of these is your legacy, is that you lifted the world of guitar playing to a new awareness. You probably nearly single-handedly made rock guitar players want to learn theory and not just be shredders, but to understand musical modal concepts. Your interviews and articles would inspire guitar players to seek out the information. Were you aware of this impact you were having on the guitar world back in the 80s?
I feel so much better having listening to that. It's just so great. Thank you. No. You know, it's funny, but as you can imagine, I feel just like a regular person. I wake up in the morning, I worry about whether or not I'm going to write a good song or any song. I wonder if my fingers are going to work as good as they did yesterday. And so I'm always a bit sort of nervous. I've got to pick up the guitar and just see that it's still working, so I feel all right. And then I'm always feeling like there's some music that's trying to get out, and I'm trying to find time to sit down and, you know, start the working process.
What musical gifts has Steve Vai brought to the world? And as one of Steve's guitar teachers, what kind of student was he?
Steve was a great student. He had so much physical talent that it was so exciting to teach him as a kid, because everything that I showed him, he would learn how to play probably by the time he was walking out the door, and he would come back with it finished, and then he'd say, and I've done a little extra with it. So it was fantastic fun, you know, just being a teacher. No stress involved. Another of his really great strengths is his ability to focus and know deep in his heart what he wants. And it's very difficult to communicate that to a guitar student, because maybe it's crossing the line of getting too familiar with a student or getting too emotional or something, you know, maybe what they really want is riffs and scales and chords. But it's so true that if you don't know what you want and you don't focus on it, you probably won't achieve it, even if you have the talents to do it. So learning how to apply yourself, I would say, is a great talent. And it can be learned, but he seemed to have an innate ability to locate that within himself, and that's been his guiding light, I think.
Let's talk about songwriting. I remember reading in the 80s an interview of you regarding your ways of finding new inspirations for writing songs, and some of those would include you staying awake for days on end and starving yourself. Is that true?
Well, starving myself because probably I was broke and didn't have money for food. That's one. I've never been into the whole fasting thing. I figure if you're hungry, you should eat, right? But staying up, you know, there is something to that, I think. You know, a little sleep deprivation. I think what it is, it's whatever it takes for you to forget about the mundane responsibilities that are occupying you during the day. We all have responsibilities. Everyone's got rent to pay or something, and that can really seem to interfere with what you're trying to achieve musically. And that's a difficult thing, I think, for all artists of any kind, whatever their media is, to sort of step outside of their normal routine, their day job, and say, okay, now become a brilliant artist can be hard. So sometimes a little device like going hungry or staying up late is just the thing to sort of make you forget about your day job or some other day-to-day problems that you've got.
You have an amazing new concert performance DVD out called Saturated that I saw at the local cinema in 3D, and I found it to be an incredible guitar experience for me. But I actually thought you needed a few more camera angles, as I only counted about 55 cameras. How was the editing for that?
That's right. 1, 2, 3. We got 3 cameras, 3D. 4.
How was the editing for that?
The hidden camera. That took a year to edit just the 2D cameras, and while that was going on, our directors, Pierre and Francois, were doing the 3D edit, which was even more difficult, and we couldn't trade edits because no one had a 3D system to view them on. So I didn't see the 3D edit that went into theaters until about maybe exactly 12 months from the day that it was filmed. But I was blown away because the 3D edit actually makes me look better than the 2D edit. And I was horrified with the 2D edit. That's because I hate looking at myself anyway. But it's mostly guitar, so the fans don't have to worry about that, you know. But I'm so happy it was done. I got to tell you, it was a crazy day. It was emotionally rough for me because it was the anniversary of my mother's passing, and I realized the night before I wasn't over that, the grieving process. So I kind of arrived having not slept, not feeling like myself, and then we were playing a very small place, and we were told you can't move around too much. So the parameters and everything going on that day felt weird, but when we walked off the stage, you know, I remember turning to the guys and saying, "Oh man, I don't know where I was. It was such a blur to me." And Mike Keneally said, "Well," he says, "you may not have achieved what you set out to achieve, but what you did achieve, I believe you're going to really love it in months to come," you know. And I think he was right. There was something that happened that was magical. And to tell you the truth, I think we got it from the audience. They were a great audience that night.
What has Steve Lukather brought to G3?
Steve Lukather, as you can tell, the music in the background, he brings an elegance and a musicology that is so different from Steve and myself. It's really quite unique. He's a different player on so many levels, and it's so beautiful to hear that. To me, that's what makes the whole G3 concept work, is you got to have people who are different from each other, who step out of their world and they bring part of that world here. And so we've got these great differences in how we play and the kind of songs we like, and then we've got these shared roots, which is where we sort of connect up with, it's just the perfect ingredient. And then, of course, if anybody out there has ever met Steve Lukather, they know that he is the funniest guy in rock and roll. He's just 24/7, jokes, funny. Your face hurts from laughing all the time, you know.
Sometimes there are defining moments in the careers of musicians. Tell us about the mysterious credit card that appeared in your letterbox back in the 80s.
I know. Where did it come from? Outer space, perhaps. Aliens from another universe delivered a credit card to my apartment that said, "Joseph Satriani," my full name, "because of your good standing in the community and your excellent credit," which I had none at the time, "we are extending you $5,000 credit, and here are the checks that you can write starting right now." And prior to that, this was really heaven sent, because a week before I had been turned down by every local studio to do a spec deal for my first album. So I had my own record company, but I needed funding to do a full-length album. And so this comes, and I go, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Had a little talk with the wife, and she's like, go for it, you know. And so I went back to the studios, and I said, what if I prepaid you? And they were like, you'll give us money before you come to the studio? As they were hurting as well. So that's what I did. By prepaying the studio, the engineer, everybody else, I got a deal. And I went in and recorded Not of This Earth, and got signed to Relativity Records. I was still completely broke, had no way of paying that back. And the week that the collection agency was about to start to go after me, I got a call from the Greg Kihn Band. I don't know if anybody remembers Greg Kihn, right? A great band. They were local to the Bay Area, and they said, Joe, I know this is the second time we've asked you, will you please join our band? We're in trouble, and you know our guitar player's strung out, and we can't finish the record, and we'll pay you. And they whatever that number was, you know, the angels were singing in my head when I heard it, and I said, I'll be right over. And I joined the band like that. They paid me a lump sum of money. I turned around, I paid off the credit card company. Within, let's say, about 8 or 9 months, while I was still on tour with Greg Kihn, Relativity released the record and then signed me to do a whole bunch of records, the first of which was Surfing with the Aliens. So took some risks that paid off.